Hello and welcome to Diary of a Common Man, and thank you for joining me yet again. This week I have a special thank you to so many of my viewers who have shared their contact details in case my channel should disappear. By the way, the government of Pakistan has decided to block one of my episodes, episode number 5. I don't know what for, but we will find out. Anyway, thank you for supporting me and sending me those details. I'll keep you posted. The channel has now registered 120,000 views over last 7 to 8 weeks. That is amazing. Thank you. On a not so good note, I have received a phone call from a viewer in Mombasa in Kenya, and he apparently is in serious financial trouble. Anyone listening to me in Mombasa and wish to help this gentleman, please contact me. Apart from that, I have received a complaint from a couple of viewers that I have blocked a few people from my channel, and the allegation is that I do not subscribe to their views, so I block them. It is true that I have blocked almost 25 people from my channel so far, but not because I don't like their views, but because they don't fit my criteria of being reasonable. Before we talk about being reasonable, what is being reasonable? Firstly, I wish to remind my viewers the purpose of my work. What I'm trying to do is simply this, which I have clarified in my episode number 1. I'll clarify again. One side of Aga Khan is very well known, the other side is not. I am trying to balance the narrative and the perception out there about him and his system, just so that people make an informed choice. It's as simple as that. Good news is that I'm getting plenty of comments, most of them supportive, encouraging, and very reasonable. Whether they are negative or positive, that doesn't matter, but they are reasonable. But some comments and the commentators are unfortunately not reasonable. Let's look at some examples. There was this lady who posted a few comments, and after a few exchanges, we didn't seem to agree with each other. So I said to her that, look, is it okay if we agree to disagree? Apparently, it was not okay. She just ignored my request and kept on posting. She went on and on and on. Now, I want my viewers to understand that I get many comments, and I really would like to respond to all of them, but this becomes difficult if people go on and on. They basically impose on the time that I could have given to the reasonable comments. So if you wish to make your point, make it and then move on. If you don't agree with my work, don't watch it. It's your right, but do respect my right to speak the truth. And then there are some people who want me to stop this campaign altogether, and this includes Aga Khani institution, and that is sad. That is unreasonable. Not only unreasonable, but it is actually denying a basic human right to speak freely, as long as someone is speaking the truth. And guess what? This is coming from people who say they are progressive, they are intelligent, and they are educated. And on the other hand, they are basically denying me a right to speak freely. I'll leave this for my viewers to think about. Then there are other people Aga Khanis and non-Aga Khanis trying to promote their own faith systems on my channel. Guys, this is not the right channel to do so. There are plenty of other channels, Aga Khani channels and non-Aga Khani channels, that will meet your needs much better than my channel. So please don't push your agenda on my channel. Thank you. Apart from that, I am getting some abusive comments from Aga Khanis attacking me, and believe it or not, my family as well. Guys, I have committed the sin of speaking the truth. Punish me, abuse me, but if possible, leave my family alone. Another issue which I will actually not tolerate at all is inciting violence. A couple of viewers have expressed the idea that my work could start a war. Such commentators and such comments will not only be blocked, but they will actually be reported. Everyone has a right to express their views. Everyone has a right to practice their beliefs. Everyone has a right to live peacefully and with a sense of security. And nobody has a right to incite violence or carry out violence against Aga Khanis or otherwise. I have said nothing in relation to this matter. I have never incited violence. In fact, by nature, I am an extremely non-violent person, and I will not tolerate anyone spreading the idea of physical violence against Aga Khanis. At the end of the day, Aga Khanis are respectable people. They have contributed to the society just like other people have, and they have a right to live in safety. So please, I cannot emphasize this enough, that on my channel I will not tolerate this. So in a nutshell, if you wish to contribute to my work, to my channel, and you wish to make comments, firstly, you will have to refrain from what I just said. Secondly, send comments that are relevant to the topic at hand. Whether the comments are negative or positive doesn't matter, but they should be reasonable and they should be respectable. Lastly, if we don't agree, let's move on. Last week, Aga Khani Imamat had accused me of attempting to spread animosity within the community. I had given them 7 days to substantiate. I wish to report to you that they are now doing what they do best: hide. No response. Ball is now in my court. I'll keep you posted. Place is New York. A chauffeur-driven car is moving along East River Drive and heading towards Idlewild Airport. Passengers in the car: Prince Aly Khan, Jack Ross, his advisor, and Leonard Slater, his biographer. In his biography, Leonard Slater says, moving out along East River Drive, we passed a red convertible. It stopped unreasonably down, a pretty red head at the wheel, alone. Ali signaled the chauffeur to slow down. He peered out, waved until he caught the young woman's eye, then swung entirely around for a last look through the rear window. Then he muttered, "If only I had more time." shifting his attention to Jack Ross. If anyone knew how to make the most of life, it was Ali. A truly inspirational individual for many reasons. He bred and raced horses that won most prestigious races, including multiple derby. He loved speeding cars, which unfortunately became the cause of his untimely death. He flew a single engine plane from Bombay to Singapore with no radio, and he was a fearless big game hunter, and he loved his champagne and a bet on a horse. He represented Pakistan to United Nations, where he became the Vice President of the General Assembly. But what brought him international fame was his ability to attract women, just like a magnet attracts a nail. Casanova, debonair, handsome, dashing young man. Ali could unleash charm over women, rendering them completely powerless. Like his father played "I'm rich" trick, Ali played "I will die without you" trick with great success, and he did not miss. Ali Salman Khan was born on 13th of July 1911 in Turin, Italy. Father Aga Khan III and mother Teresa Magliano, a ballet dancer. As a young boy, Ali never went to school. Instead, his father arranged tutors to instruct him at home. When he was 11 years old, his parents got married in Bombay. A marriage Ali never spoke about for the rest of his life. We learned earlier that his father was hardly a part of his life when he was growing up. As a result, his mother, Teresa, was the center of his universe. But as fate would have it, she died, leaving him alone when he was only 15 years of age. With mother gone, father busy with more interesting matters, young Ali's future took an undesirable turn. Harvard Health Publication is a media and publishing division of Harvard University. In one of its publications, it says, physical abuse is just one type of child abuse. Neglect and emotional abuse can be just as damaging, and since they are more subtle, others are less likely to intervene. One example of neglect and emotional abuse is limited physical contact with the child, particularly in childhood. Neuroscientist Dr. Martin Tischer, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Harvard, Director of Biopsychiatry Research Program at Belmont, he has found in his studies that neglect in childhood can result in abnormal brainwave patterns. Consequences can be many. One of them is sexual promiscuity, and that is exactly what Ali turned out to be, a promiscuous young man. As a teenager, his first romance was with very pretty Margaret Wingham, the daughter of George Wingham, a multimillionaire, but her father did not approve. Ali interpreted the rejection based on race, because once George publicly insulted Ali, calling him a nigger. In the summer of 1933, Ali attended a dinner party. On his table was a stranger, beautiful 25-year-old English woman, Joan Guinness. She was married to Thomas Guinness, a merchant banker. They had a little son, Patrick. They say for Ali, it was love at first sight. But then, love at first sight would become a regular occurrence during Ali's short life. Anyway, Ali kept staring at John across the table, and before John could say or do anything, Ali leaned across the table and said, "Darling, will you marry me?" Obviously, she and other people on the table were shocked. When she gathered herself, she told him she was already married and she had a little son. But John did not have any idea that she was dealing with Ali. Soon, flowers with romantic messages such as "I will die without you" began arriving at her hotel suite. Not long after that, she succumbed. An affair began in the absence, obviously, of Thomas. He was on a business trip at that time. They began meeting at Ritz Hotel in Paris. Ali being a regular at the hotel, the affair was soon discovered by Thomas, and he wasted no time in filing for divorce, which was granted by the London court based on the adultery charges between April 17 to April 20, 1935 at Ritz Hotel. The court granted the custody of young Patrick to Thomas. Ali married Joanne on 18th of May 1936. 7 months later, she delivered a baby boy who would become the next Aga Khan, Shah Karim Al Hussaini. A year later, Karim's younger brother Amin Mahomed was born. With time, however, John realized Ali was not made for family. There were extramarital affairs which she did her best to brush under the carpet, but nothing could prepare her for the arrival of a glittering star. Elsa Maxwell, an American socialite, author, and a prominent Hollywood producer, once said, "When Ali fell in love with a woman, it was madly and deeply. Only thing, it might last only one night." Once Elsa threw a party at Summer Casino in Cannes. She invited elites which included Ali and Hollywood star Rita Hayworth. At that time, Rita was married to the famous Hollywood actor, director, producer Orson Welles. As for Ali, he was still married to Joan and had 2 children, Karim and Amin Mohammed. Anyway, Ali began a brand new affair with Rita and they moved in with each other. They say, what goes around comes around. Just like Thomas was devastated when he discovered the affair between his wife Joan and Ali, this time Joan was on the receiving end. She discovered Ali's latest fling with Rita. For her, that was the last straw. Joan filed for a divorce in February 1949. Back to Ali and Rita. The proposal from Ali did not take long to arrive, but to Ali's surprise, Rita declined. Her secretary, Shifra Haran, once said, although Rita was charmed by Ali, she felt his social and cultural circumstances were not compatible with hers. Soon Rita left for Hollywood, where Columbia Pictures was expecting her to complete her assignments. But then Ali was Ali. He followed her to US, rented a house across hers. Flowers, gifts and letters implying he will die without her started arriving. Soon Rita gave in and the couple was back in Paris with Rita's little daughter, Rebecca. To celebrate the new year that year, Ali, Rita, and Rebecca headed for Stade in Switzerland. Stade in Switzerland is the place where John and her two boys, Karim and Amin, lived, and Ali could not find any other place in the world but Stade to celebrate New Year with his latest girlfriend Rita. Couple descended upon Stade, and to add insult to the injury, Ali picked up Karim and Amin so he could celebrate the New Year with them. It was little wonder that the press criticized Ali and Rita. In particular, People's newspaper in London headline read, "This affair is an insult to all decent women." On the other hand, Aga Khan, His Highness, did not approve of this relationship. Personally, he preferred John as his daughter-in-law. Ali, however, did not relent, and he arranged a meeting between Rita and his family. But nothing could prepare Aga Khan, His Highness, to face the fact that Rita was already pregnant with Ali's child. Aga Khan had no choice but to bless the wedding, which was set for 27 May 1949. One part of Rita was always drawn to Ali, just like a nail is attracted to a magnet, but the other part was always apprehensive about marrying him. Approaching the wedding in particular, Rita felt increasingly nervous. She was now in two minds and suffered from anxiety. Although she was not living with her husband Orson Welles anymore, she would always turn to him for advice. He happened to be in Rome at the time. Rita sent him a telegram requesting an urgent meeting. Welles was sensitive to her dilemma but advised her to go ahead with the wedding. He advised her if it didn't work out, there was nothing stopping her from seeking a divorce. Ali and Rita's wedding became the biggest media event of the year. Civil ceremony at Khan's town hall was followed by Muslim ceremony. Then the world witnessed a most extravagant reception at Ali's chateau for 500 guests, and the champagne flowed into the night. And men continued the celebration at Khan's casino. Rita's business manager, Lee Elroy, narrated an interesting incident. He said, whilst they were enjoying a drink, Ali asked Lee, "You've been here a week or so, haven't you?" And when Lee said yes, Ali disappeared and came back with two attractive girls. And Ali said to Lee, "Take your pick." When Lee declined, Ali shrugged and disappeared with the blonde. As it often happens, without love, relationships don't last. The fire of passion and lust that Rita and Ali shared with each other soon started to fizzle. Speaking to the media, Rita once said, "I love Ali very much, he is very nice, but he doesn't understand family life. He only thinks of gambling, horse racing and big game hunting. He's a playboy. While I work all year round in Hollywood, Ali spends too much while I have to work for the two of us." 7 months later, on 28 December 1949, Rita gave birth to their daughter Yasmin. Ali, Rita, Rebecca and baby Yasmin settled in Stade in Switzerland, where John, Karim and Amin lived. Back to Aga Khan. His Highness was now deeply disturbed with Ali's life is a party attitude. After all, Ali was his successor to be the Imam of this Islamic sect. How would his followers react to all the media reports about Ali and his roadshow? Little did Aga Khan realize that was only the beginning of the troubles Ali was going to cause him. Anyway, Aga Khan thought of an idea. He decided to get Ali to spend time with his followers. That way, he will keep away from trouble and get accustomed to his future role as an Imam. He ordered Ali and Rita to visit Africa. Girls were put in the care of a nanny in Paris. Couple departed for Zanzibar. The visit, however, was anything but pleasant. Couple quarreled, sometimes violently. Ali would attend Jamaat Khanas to meet his father's followers, and Rita would not know how to kill time. One day, without informing Ali, she took a chartered plane out of Zanzibar and flew back to Paris, picked up the girls, and flew back to New York. It was here that she filed for the divorce, quoting, "extreme cruelty, entirely mental in nature," as the reason for the divorce. Unaware that Rita was filing a divorce in New York, Ali fell in love with another Hollywood star, Jean Tierney, and as always, deeply and madly. Aga Khan was now shaking. He was worried and strongly opposed the relationship with Jean. With Rita, he had relented due to her pregnancy, but this time he was adamant. Ali was not going to marry Jean. He gave Ali a choice, Jean or Imamat. What do you think Ali chose? This time he chose Imamat. Imamat that he never got. In any case, Ali rejected Jean's proposal to get married. Rejection for any human being is always difficult to deal with, but for a person like Jean, it was another matter. She had already had a history of mental illness, which was caused by the birth of a retarded child. Jean completely broke down and she was admitted to a mental hospital. She stayed there for 2 long years. US and European press had been hot on the trail of Ali and Rita. Now they were feeding on the affair between Ali and Jean, and then the tragedy of Jean's mental illness. It became a circus. But this time the circus included one more artist, Aga Khan. And Aga Khan was not happy. He was furious, and he was furious not without a reason. There were calls from educated followers to abdicate his claim on spiritual leadership. And before the fire could spread, His Highness summoned the leadership, ordered them to obtain a signature on a declaration of loyalty from all followers. And if anybody should refuse, they should be excommunicated. Almost everybody signed up. But why? They were just complaining. They were asking Aga Khan to abdicate his claim on spiritual leadership, what had happened now? Excommunication. I think we discussed it earlier that it was worse than death. And Aga Khan was now desperate enough to order excommunication for anyone that does not sign the declaration of loyalty. Harry Greenwald in his book writes about excommunication. If an Ismaili is excommunicated, he becomes automatically an equivalent of an untouchable. The whole community boycotts him. He would be left to die alone. During the next 2 years, whilst Ali was still married to Rita, he started dating other celebrities, which includes John Fontaine, Lise Bourdain, Liana Zafirani, Irene Papas, Kim Novak, Irene Leah, and Yvonne Di Carlo. In her autobiography, No Bed of Roses, Joan Fontaine talks about thorns in her life. She writes, Ali Khan was a marvelous fairy tale prince and he knew it. He was a butterfly covering as many flowers as he could. In January 1953, divorce between Rita and Ali was granted, and Rita kept the custody of Yasmin. In 1954, Ali started dating Bettina Graziani, a model. In 1956, he starts dating Kim Novak. Zaza Gabor once said, the secret of Ali's success was his concentration. He knew how to give a woman the idea that he would die if she did not give in to him. He was after me for years, the sweet thing. I used to tell him no, but he never gave up. This uncontrolled sexual behavior came to an end in 1960. It was an abrupt end. Ali was driving his Lancia sports car. With him was his girlfriend Bettina, and she was pregnant with his child. She survived with some injuries, but Ali and his unborn child succumbed to their injuries. Ali was only 48 years of age. Next week, we cover the life of the current Aga Khan, Shah Karim Al Hussaini. Until then, take care of yourself. Goodbye.